Happy morning, students. In today's video class, we are gonna deal with the paper English for Enrichment 2 and the course code is 742E. From Unit 1, I have taken Pygmalion for today's explanation, and I'm Kanya, Assistant Professor of English from Madurai Sivagasi Nadas Meenakshi Women's College. These are the contents of today's video class: biography of G.B. Shah, some information about the play, characters. From Act 1 to Act 5, every acts will be summarized, then themes will be explained in detail. These are the contents of today's class. Then, biography of George Bernard Shaw. George Bernard Shaw was an Irish playwright. He was a critic, a polemicist, and a political activist. A polemicist means a narrator. He lived between the years 1856 to 1950. He was highly influenced by the Western theatre, their culture and politics, which extended from 1880s and continued till his death. His notable works include Pygmalion, The Perfect Wagnerite, Cashel Byron's Profession. He has also won several awards, including the Nobel Prize for Literature, which he won in the year 1925. Some information about the play. It's really quite interesting to know why this play has been named as Pygmalion. Pygmalion was published in the year 1912 and it has been named after a Greek mythological character, a sculptor who was named Pygmalion. Pygmalion was not interested in women and he decided to remain single throughout his life. But what had happened? Fortunately or unfortunately, he carved a beautiful women's statue out of ivory. The statue was exquisitely beautiful that he fell in love with the statue. So, what had happened? He wanted to marry the statue itself. For that, during a festival, he offered his prayers to the goddess of love, Aphrodite, and his wish has been granted that the statue came to life. He married the statue who has been granted with life. He named the women as Galatia. And can you understand why he has named this play as Pygmalion? Because here in this play also we have a Pygmalion and Galatia. But here, instead of Pygmalion falling in love with the statue will fall in love with the Pygmalion. So let's go into the characters. Professor Henry Higgins, he's a great phonetician who can point out people from their slang and their pronunciation. Point out means from which area they belong to. We people can guess the people like Madurai Karanga and Chennai people, like that we will be able to identify people with their slang similar to that. But he is a great phonetician. Let's see what he does. Then Colonel Pickering, he is a retired officer as well, the author of Spoken Sanskrit, who has travelled all the way from India to meet Professor Henry Higgins. Eliza Doolittle, she is a florist, She is a statue. She is a florist who wanted to improve her standards. All she wanted was to learn phonetics and improve her standard of living. Then Alfred Doolittle, he is Eliza's father, and Mrs. Ainsford Hill, she is a lady who has lost her husband and she takes care of her children, Clara and Freddie. Clara is a modern girl. She's not a woman. She is a modern girl. And Freddie, he is a handsome young man who doesn't work. That's all about the major characters. And one more character is Mrs. Higgins, who is Higgins' mother. And at last, I have not included it in the slide, Mrs. Pierce, she will appear in the play from second scene, I think. She is the assistant of Professor Henry Higgins. So these are the major characters in this play. Apart from this, we have some minor characters as well who will appear only in the opening scene of the play. So let's go into the Act 1. When the play opens, we can say it is heavily raining and all the people are taking shelter around a convent garden and the time is 11:15 p.m. Clara and her mother, Eansford, will be chiding Freddie for not being able to find a cab. So Freddie, in a hurry to look for a cab, he will move fast from the place. At that time, this girl Eliza will enter the convent garden gate. So they both will knock. They'll dash, and this fellow Freddie will knock into Eliza, making some of her flowers falling on the ground. For that, Eliza will ask some money from Freddie, but he will move away from the place. And Ian Swordhill will give some amount, like sixpence, I think. She'll give some sixpence to the girl because her son has spilled the flowers. So she'll give Eliza some sixpence. So Liza will not be satisfied with the money she has. What she'll do means she will be asking for money from all the bystanders. There'll be our old man, who is none other than Colonel Pickering. She'll ask Colonel Pickering to buy some flowers from her, but he won't buy flowers. Instead, he will offer her some 3 pence which he has. One of the bystanders, one of the men from the mob, will just warn Eliza, saying that, see, look at there, a man is standing, who is standing there with a note. He has been noticing all your words. I guess he is an informer of the police. So if you misbehave, he will definitely catch hold of you and you will be arrested. So on listening to these words, Liza was scared. She was terrified to the core. What she did means she straight away walked to the man, crying and weeping, just raising a hue. No, I didn't do any mistake. I was asking the old man, to buy some flowers from me. Like that, she'll just encounter Higgins, and Higgins will make it sure and reveal his identity, that he is not an informant but a fanatician. So he'll just point out all the persons who have spoken some words, like Eliza. She belongs to a slum area, and Clara and her mother. About Clara and her mother, about each and everyone, he would be able to pinpoint their area of residence. So the crowd will be awestruck, like everyone will be like of the same opinion, and Eliza will also be shocked. At this juncture, our Colonel Pickering, who has travelled from India to meet Henry Higgins, will get introduced, and they will make plans to meet each other at Wimpole Street the next day. While they were discussing, Higgins will reveal that he can transform an individual from being a slum area person to a great phonetician. So like that, he will just he'll be blowing his own trumpet to Pickering. This girl, Eliza, would be listening to all the words of Higgins, and she will note down his address as well, the Wimpole Street. At last, finally, when the mob begin to move away, at this time the rain would have stopped and the mob will just move away from the convent garden. Clara and her mother will also move away from the place, saying that they can afford a bus. They can get hold of they can catch a bus. They can catch a bus. Saying these words, they'll walk out of the place. Freddie will come after they left the place. He will look for his mother and sister, but they won't be there. But he will be looking at Liza with an awestruck expression. Act 2 opens the next day at 11 a.m. where we can see Higgins and Pickering were having a discussion in Higgins' laboratory on Wimpole Street. At that time, Mrs. Pierce will show Liza in. Liza would have arrived at Higgins' laboratory in order to seek his help to improve her standards. She wanted to look for a job in a flower shop. As well, she wanted to improve her standard of living. For that, Higgins will criticize her in every possible way. But Pickering will assure that Higgins will never succeed in making Eliza as a rich girl. So Higgins will accept this as a challenge, and he will say that he will reply that within a period of 6 months he would be able to pass her off as a duchess. So they both will accept the challenge, and Pickering will offer to pay for Eliza's education. But Mrs. Pierce will protest all these arrangements, saying that an unmarried lady should never be allowed to stay there. But nobody will listen to her. They will decide that Eliza must be given good clothing, her physical appearance must be totally changed, her dressing, including her dressing, everything must be changed, not only phonetics. So, with this decision, they will send off Eliza to the washroom along with our maid Mrs. Pierce. While they both were gone, the both ladies were gone. Again, Higgins and Pickering will be talking to each other. At this juncture, another fellow will drop in. He is none other than Eliza's father, Alfred Doolittle. He will come and demand some amount from Henry Higgins. But Higgins will say that immediately Eliza must be sent away. He would think that Alfred Doolittle has come behind Eliza in order to threaten and confiscate some money from Higgins. So he will decide that Eliza must be sent away from the home. Alfred Doolittle will be scared. Oh my God, all I need is just a £5 to booze. If you give me £5, I'll just walk away from the place. All I want is a good life for my daughter, like this. He'll pretend, and he will also add that don't reveal that I'm here to my daughter on this purpose. He'll say all these things while they were talking. Eliza will be brought again in front of them. She will be in a kimono, a Japanese kimono, neatly bathed and neatly dressed. Her total appearance would have changed by now. Everyone, including Higgins, Pickering, and even Alfred Doolittle, can never find out Eliza Doolittle. So that will happen in Act 2. When we move on to Act 3, some months would have passed by now. While teaching, we must say this because it will be given after Act 2. When this fellow leaves the place, Alfred Doolittle leaves the place, what will happen means Higgins will have a hard time teaching Eliza. When he asks her to pronounce a letter, when he says it as A, she will say it as A. When she says B, she will say B. So it won't be that much good. He will strike her, pinch her, do all sorts of things to mold her. So only this thing would have been given there. After that, we'll come on to scene 3. In scene 3, some months would have passed. So they Higgins and Pickering would wanted to just give a try with Eliza by bringing her out. For that, they will decide that Mrs. Higgins will be the right person. So they'll take this lady, Miss Eliza, to Mrs. Higgins' house, and Mrs. Higgins will be wondering why this girl and Pickering Higgins have arrived at that time, because it was her day at home. Day at home means on that day she would be receiving guests. So it was her day at home. Miss and Mrs. Ainsford Hill will arrive. That is Clara and Ainsford Hill will arrive at Mrs. Higgins' house, followed by Freddie. Freddie will be awestruck by the appearance of Eliza Doolittle. By now, he would not be able to identify Eliza because she would have been completely transformed. Her slang, her way of dressing, her appearance, everything would have completely changed. So they will just talk about some random things because it is a kind of prelude or test to this lady, Eliza Doolittle. So she'll discuss about weather, rainfall, blah blah blah. So well, they after this, what will happen means they'll just walk out of the place. But Mrs. Higgins will scold Pickering and Higgins for undertaking such a decision in molding Eliza, because after they have molded her, her future is questionable. She'll believe that from being a slum area girl, she will elevate to the level of a duchess. But what will remain is nothing. What she gains will be nothing. She can't adapt to her slum area. She can never go back to the slum area, as well as she can't adapt to her new style. So where she will go, where it will land her, all these questions will be raised by Mrs. Higgins, but nobody will answer her. Then we will move on to Act 4. Act 4. In Act 4, Eliza passes off as a duchess. It was complete success. When she was taken to the ambassadorial party, everyone will admire her and nobody would be able to identify that she was a slum girl. Everybody will admire her. So things will go very well, and by the beginning of Act 4, we will see Higgins and Pickering discussing about Higgins' success. Nobody will pay attention to Eliza. Nobody will appreciate Eliza. At this juncture, Eliza will be heartbroken, because even though he had taken a lot of efforts, it is only her learning, it was only her interest had elevated to her level. Just not even a word of praise. They will just throw her. It will broke her. So what she'll do? She'll cry. She'll take off all her jewelries, the slippers, everything which has been bought by Higgins, and throw away everything. And she would have fallen in love with Higgins by this time. All she wanted was his love, but he would never reciprocate it. According to him, she is just a living doll. Even Mrs. Higgins' mother will say the same thing. You are just considering us like a doll, like a living doll. You are playing in her life. She would have told that. Sorry, I have forgotten that. So a clash will begin between Higgins and Eliza. So Eliza will take away everything. She'll hand over everything, even a ring which was presented by Higgins. She'll throw it into fire. And she'll walk out of the room. And when she goes down, she will find out Freddie, who is waiting for her. So in a depressed mood, not knowing what to do, she will take Freddie for granted and go along with him. She'll kiss him. They both will move out of the place in a car, and she'll decide that she will marry him. So that's all in Act 4. In Act 5, what will happen? Mrs. Higgins, the next morning, Eliza will be missing from Higgins' home. Higgins may not be able to find her whereabouts. So he will just reach his mother's house looking for Eliza and looking very sad, broken. At that time, Mrs. Higgins will say that Eliza is in her house and she has made up her mind to marry Freddie. But this fellow, Higgins, will be very much upset with her decision of marrying Freddie, because she had succeeded in passing off as a duchess. She has become an eligible girl. Why she is choosing Freddie? No answer can be found. At this time, this fellow Alfred Doolittle will be coming and inviting Mrs. Higgins and Henry Higgins for his marriage. Instead of giving his daughter in marriage, he will get married. So that's the irony of this play. And when the play ends, we can see, helped by Pickering, Freddie and Eliza Doolittle will set up a flower shop And Freddie, who is not very good at mathematics and accounts, he will learn to keep accounts, and that's all. Their life will move on. Higgins was not at all satisfied with her marrying Freddie. So that's all about this play. Let's move on to the uh, themes of the play. The major themes of the play are language and speech. So the play explores the aspects of language in every possible way. Then appearance and identity. So her appearance would be like a duchess, but she will be identified only as a florist. So that is appearance and identity. Then social class and manners. So how the mannerisms differs from every social class. Education and intelligence. So education is very much important to raise one's standards. That's also one of the major themes in this play. Then femininity and gender roles. All these things have been discussed in detail by G.B. Sharp. So femininity, as far as this femininity and gender roles is concerned, even Eliza Doolittle wanted to elevate her standards. Even though she has raised her standards, she couldn't express her love for Higgins. She couldn't get married to the man who she has desired. So that is what is femininity and gender roles. Thank you.